thank you to all the panel for showing, where we have been. I think that was a poignant end and really showed the value of the programme. So it's over to the audience now. I'm sure that you're going to take every advantage of asking this good panel of experts questions about the programme, as to concentrating on what they've said on where it's been before you go through to the next session. Now we've got two roving mics, or rather two people holding mics and roving around the room. So if you would like to ask a question, if you'd like to do it in the usual fashion by putting up your hand and saying who you are and where you're from before you pose a question. So have we got any takers?
Short session. Good afternoon, Paul Hancock. I'm the President of the Chief Fire Officers Association. Probably a simple question, really. We've got funding this year, hopefully funding for the next 2 years to deliver those bits that are still remaining in white, those white boxes. What comes after April 2018 in terms of sustaining the programme to refresh the guidance and to maintain it?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, it's thinking the guidance group and the team are going through already. I think the amount of funding going in at the moment is there to refresh and renew all that type of guidance, so we have the whole suite that Nick described. After that, we really go into maintenance or anything new. So I think in terms of the operational guidance group, the team there, you probably won't need the resource that you do just for that. But there's so many more aligned things. So we're looking at training specifications, we're looking at procurement, we're looking at HR, there's technical notes to do with mobilising. There's all these national things that are crying out for a home somewhere. And I think it's a conversation over the next 2 or 3 years about how we develop all that.
I hope in the next session that perhaps there'll be more discussion around that. Is there anyone else would like to? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Brodie from Leicestershire Fire Service. What's the general picture around the country of how the national operational guidance is being implemented in local services and within regions?
I don't know whether I'm qualified to give a perspective around the country, but certainly a means of implementation has been where there's been regional ops groups, and they have kind of taken on board this process of now taking the national operational guidance and incorporating it into their work. It's not a difficult process because of the nature of the development of the guidance. As Nick has pointed out, the access to it and the usability of that guidance to incorporate into your operating procedures makes it quite simple. So I'm not suggesting that that's what's happening all around, but if you want an implementation approach, it's quite simple, and we're happy to share that.
I think if I can, Andrew, we've got an implementation forum, and actually I think it's another indication of the success of the programme. Every single fire service is now represented on the implementation forum, so there's a user, if you like, across the entire sector in every single service coming together to do implementation. But as ever with the Fire and Rescue Service, this is not something we can dictate, and it's up to the leadership of the service in each service to determine the pace at which they use the material that's available. And I think my view would be, from the programme perspective, there's a lot more to do. We're going to do a lot more encouraging, but I think there's a lot more for the service and the sector to do. There's a lot more for people in this room to do to use the material that we've now made available. So good progress could always be better.
Gentleman over there.
I take the point that Roy just made there in his response to Paul's question. I compliment the board for all the work they've done, and a fantastic initiative to get to where it is. And I think once the bulk of the work is done, then, as Phil mentioned, it's about the new guidance for evolving and emerging risks, which will be less because you've done the bulk of the work. But it's a bit about updating guidance, and that comes from, as you said, Phil, from lessons learned. My question's around the lessons learned bit, because my experience tells me that sometimes we as a service don't learn the lessons because it's how they're brought out from that service that had the experience. So the service had the experience, they've had perhaps their internal debrief, but how do those lessons learned get shared? But there's also the other piece about sometimes, depending on the nature of the incident, services are prevented by maybe a court case from being able to share that learning. I've had personal experience of that at an incident in the service I used to command, that we were restricted from sharing all the information because of a significant inquiry going on. And so my question is around that. What thoughts have you got about that as a board, of ensuring services are able to capture what they've learnt and share it with you so you can update guidance, but also that area and that issue around an instance occurred, but the lessons that are known to some are not initially shared on a wider basis so that the whole service can learn from that?
Happy. Thanks, Des. I think it's one of those perennial problems, isn't it, about identifying the lessons, and even worse is then learning those lessons and implementing. It's something that we're very conscious in the guidance, but also in a number of other areas. So within the operations directorate, Simon Pilling from West Yorkshire leads on operational effectiveness, and there's a whole project there working with the guidance team to develop a system within the fire services for identifying lessons, bringing those lessons forward into guidance, but also learning those lessons through training specifications. So that works through that way. We have the CFO Ops Bulletin for anything particularly urgent that will go out. But what's building above that, very much, we've not mentioned JESSOP today, Joint Emergency Services Interoperability Programme, something else that's quite close to my heart. The Joint Organisational Learning project there goes across the 3 services as well. So our project at the moment will bring that operational effectiveness project into the Joint Organisational Learning project to move forward. The other issue you mentioned about not being able to share lessons early because of inquiries, court cases, trials, etc. I think we've worked very hard over the last few years as a service, and certainly as CFOA and LGA, to get very much closer to the health and safety executive. We now have in place the definite workplace protocol for firefighter fatality that enables those lessons to come out much quicker than they did before. So I think that part of it's actually about relationships with the prosecutors, whoever they may be. You know, criminals are much more difficult, but HSE is a bit easier now. So I think we haven't cracked that problem yet, but we're well on the way.
Anyone else like to?
Oh, well, I'm just going to say I'm so pleased that Des asked that question, actually, because Roy Bishop is going to stand up in a bit and explain what we're doing as a programme. He's leading a project within the programme on national operational learning, which ties, I hope, together a lot of the things that Roy's been saying with the work that we're doing. So really thanks for the question, Des, and let's come back to that a bit later.
I could have said that.
Dave Walton, West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. One of the phrases that was used this afternoon is that the guidance is written by the service for the service. I think those of us that have been involved in the programme recognise that the reality is that it's written by some of the service for all of the service. What are the panel's thoughts on getting greater engagement and buy-in from everybody to bring in all that effort together to write this guidance for us?
What we really ought to do, I think, Dave, is have a seminar like this to try and encourage more people to come along. Because what we'd like to do is get the leaders of those services in a room, and the political leaders, to encourage all those beneath them to become involved in this. You know, the more broader church of people we can get involved, and the more contributors we can get and we can make to this, the better it will be. And we're driving communications at this, the topmost political level, for, as you know, at chief fire officer level, at trades union level, across the sector for all of our contributors, and we're driving it for practitioners as well. So our doors are open. There's an opportunity advertised on our website, did I mention? www.ukfrs.com. There are adverts on there for people to become involved. So please, yes, you are leaders in this room, encourage more people to contribute to this programme. It will be better for them.
Yeah, and it's interesting, we've got those new projects coming online next year. I will be looking for executives to lead projects for services to get involved. So part of that job is my role within this is to encourage people. I did think back to something a man called Brian Robinson once said to me, which is it sort of works in thirds. He said a third will, a third won't, and a third can't. We'll have to deal with the third that can't.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, panel. Steve Apter, East Sussex Fire and Rescue Service. Check. Just building on Dave's question, really, it's ironic there's consultation out at the moment about statutory footing for collaboration between the blue light services, and here we are discussing trying to get ourselves to collaborate. which is probably our primary challenge at the minute, I would suggest. I was interested in Davy's presentation. North of the border, there's a connect for me between integration and sustainability. And do the panel think, because of the fear around the sustainability linked to the financial position, is creating some lack of engagement or integration within some services, because a lot of energy, a lot of effort goes into implementation, as we know, for it then to dry up. There's a real fear, isn't there, that in 10 years' time, those who come after we've gone will be sitting here saying, whatever happened to that, and why did we leave a gap, and where's the legacy? So there's a question and also an observation.
Yes.
You've stumped them.
Claire will be speaking in a minute.
Has anyone else got a question on this session before we... Oh, sorry.
I thought it was really interesting. We got a question from Paul about the future of funding, and we've got a question from Des about lessons learned, which, of course, you'll never see an end to. There will always be lessons being learned on every incident ground. And Roy's mentioned interoperability, and you'll always have other services changing the ways they work and needing the fire service to nationally adapt and change. You'll always have new risks being identified by the National Risk Register, which we'll need to be able to have capabilities to manage. None of that's going away. And I suppose the question, I'm making more of a point, I suppose, but the question might be, do we think that government recognises the need to have that trusted partner working at a national level in the fire service to work with all of those other external agencies?
What government might think?
They're in the government.
Is this a good one for you?
You're welcome to that.
Maybe a member of Parliament.
It's interesting, Stephen. I'm involved in discussions with DCLG on a number of levels, including funding for national resilience, including funding for operational guidance, including if you want to move things to the sector, then the sector in terms of the professional services CFOA, it needs to be able to fund itself somehow. And we've already heard that the services are shrinking, less people are able to put people forward to do national work. It's a difficult, almost wicked problem at the moment, but I'm sure DCLG do recognise the need for a central body to coordinate all that.
We're very diplomatic against that. Are there any more questions, or is that one the final question for this session? Yes. Well, all it does to remains to me to do is to thank this particular panel, and I'm sure they've set the scene for the next question is where are we going, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and your expertise.